We have about an hour together. I wish we had 3, because usually I have like so much content I need to get through. We have about an hour together, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through my own personal sort of story of transformation, transition. Sometimes I get a bit emotional when I share it, because there's a lot there. And then I'm going to talk you through these 9 principles of change that came from a lot of research. I've interviewed over 2,000 people to date who've been through every possible type of change you can imagine. So career transformation, financial transformation, health changes, personal changes. So that's the plan for the day. So take some notes, and I'm going to take a little sip of water. We're going to get going. So, as you can hear, I have an accent. And it's usually the first question I get asked. You know, there are times where I used to speak, and I used to have people just go, and I used to be like, am I speaking French or something? Like, does no one understand what I'm saying? And I sort of asked, I was like, is there anything going on? They were like, where are you from? Like, where's the accent? So I usually try and sort of address that question from the start. I was born in the United States. So I actually have an American passport, which surprises most people. I have a French mother and a Belgian father. And you know, as you heard, I grew up in 6 different countries. I grew up in the United States. I grew up in France. I grew up in Belgium. I grew up in the UK. And then I actually spent most of my childhood in Asia. I was in Hong Kong for 7 years, and then in China. And I think my parents, you know, without them really knowing what they were doing, they were really preparing me for this thing that I find myself doing now, which is speaking to people about change. Because I was in 6 different schools, and I had different, you know, sort of environments and cultures and religions to be sort of aware of and part of. And I sort of was like, you know, this is so interesting. And we keep on sort of moving around. Like, that was sort of what was most normal for me. And I never really sort of realized that change is the most important constant in life. It's the #1 life skill that I feel we all need to be learning. And yet we never really get told how to go through change. You know, who are parents here in the room? Parents? You guys need to help your kids through change. A lot of the times, parents, we protect our kids from change. Everything's stable, everything's the same, they've got to have a routine, you know, no change, no change, no change. And then as adults, what happens is we go out in the world, and we're faced with a lot of change, and we think, ooh, change, something's wrong, not normal, right? And so it's right from the get-go that we teach our kids, and we all are sort of, you know, we have this belief that change is bad. And yet the very best things that have ever happened to you have also happened to you because something changed. So just sort of bear that in mind. Change gets a very bad rap, but if you are, you know, married, or if you've had kids, or if you're in amazing jobs, all of that stuff, that has also happened because something has changed. So grew up in Hong Kong, and it was very interesting because my upbringing was difficult at home. We don't need to go into that. A lot of us have had sort of difficult childhoods, and it propels us to something really great and really beautiful. But I went to the LSE, and you know, my whole focus at that time was to be perfect. And it was to get my father's approval. I don't know if that sounds familiar for anyone. And it was to not mess up, and it was to not make mistakes, and it was to speed through college as quickly as I could, and be financially independent, and never depend on a man, and you know, just get it right. And a lot of the times, I think as women, we sort of set that as our goal, and the goal of happiness, or the goal of being in touch with your soul, or like that just doesn't even feature. It's not okay to mess up, we've got to be a particular way, we've got to look a particular way, and that becomes sort of the focus. And I can tell you, it was a very miserable time. Because when you're constantly trying to reach that standard of perfection, not a lot of stuff feels very good. So just to give you a sense, I graduated high school, I was 16. I graduated university, I was 19. I was first out of my class at the London School of Economics. And I went into Boston Consulting Group. I was the youngest consultant they'd ever hired. And all these things were supposed to make my ego feel very good. And it did for about half a second. And then continued this journey of, well, what's next? And what's the next great thing I can go amass? And what's the next sort of ego valuable thing I can do? Without ever really checking in. And so after management consulting, you go to business school. And so I got accepted to Stanford. I was the youngest person at Stanford. And all these things were, you know, starting to make me realize that I was off track. But I still went along with it anyway. Because even though that inner voice and the inner microphone, which we're going to talk about, it starts going off, it never really goes away. So here I'm at 22, 23, 24, trying to create a very perfect external life for myself. And then I moved to New York and I got hired by these 3 very major media companies. And I was saving money and I was dating the right guys and all these things were sort of my journey. And I got hired, I remember, and this is where things really started changing. I got hired by Time Warner. And I got hired to run a $500 million venture capital fund. Now, I had no experience in venture capital. I barely knew what this job was. I thought they were crazy. And they were crazy. But they hired me anyway, and I was the first partner in this fund. And I thought, I'm a fake. Like, there's no way I can even do this job. But again, I sort of, pummeled through it with more force than grace. And I sort of was like, I've got to get this done. I've got to get this done. And I'll share this with you. When I was announced in the Wall Street Journal, it said, de Bonvoisin hired as managing director of Time Warner's $500 million fund. Now, you would have imagined that for someone like me, that would have been a really happy day. It was a miserable day. It was so miserable, I called my assistant and I told her I was going to stay at home. And I cried at home because that was not the right press release. I was supposed to be the girl that said, Ariane opens orphanages and colleges and homeless shelters, and like something was off. So here I was, I had created this picture of a life with a big reputation, big identity, big woman in media, and it was false. It was a false identity, and there was a big disconnect between this external life and my internal life. And when you get those sort of epiphanies, you don't get the courage immediately. Sometimes it takes a few months or even a few years for your courage to catch up with what you actually need to do. But I go to the inner microphone just to give you a sense. So the inner microphone sounds something like this. Ariane, you're in the wrong job. Okay? And then I had another inner microphone going on, because I used to be about 50 pounds heavier than I am now. Ariane, you need to lose the weight. And then I had a third inner microphone going on. You can imagine how miserable this was. Ariane, you're sleeping with the wrong guy. Because of course the guy I was sleeping with was one of People magazine's most eligible bachelors. I had to go get that too, right? So long story short, it took me about 2 years to sort of get down on my knees and pray and ask for courage and to sort of say, how can I actually get out of this box that I've created for myself? And we all have boxes, whether you think about it or not. You all have a box around yourself that A, is keeping you safe. And even though it might be creating immense suffering, maybe not the same that I was feeling, we've got to sort of find our way out of our box and sort of go, well, how can we move through that? So I prayed for courage, and eventually, I ended up leaving, to the huge dismay of my parents, as you can imagine. The disapproval, and people are going to be upset with you, and people are going to think you're crazy. And I was like, what, it's just, I can't do this anymore. And so after leaving, I did the only thing that I knew how to do, which is I went traveling, which is always sort of my way of sort of finding my soul and finding my strength again. And I went to about 25 countries. I went to India, I went to Africa, and I did go to the orphanages, and I did go to the schools, and I spent some time with my parents. But what started happening was one thing. I started getting really clear on what had been missing for me through that first sort of decade of just pushing myself to work hard and pushing myself to fit in. And the main thing that was missing was I had no sense of meaning in my life. None. I had no sense of contribution. I did not get a feel that what I was doing with my life mattered. Now, here's what's interesting. The recent Gallup polls in this country, 66% of people currently employed are disengaged from their jobs for the exact same reason. There's no sense of what I'm doing makes a difference in any particular way. And 26% of those are actively disengaged, meaning they're at work, actively disengaged and looking for another job. So this sense of meaning, so I swore to myself that whatever I was going to do next, that was going to be what was going to be on top. It was not ego, it was not significance, it was not praise and approval from the world, it was how do I make a difference. Now, a lot of the times we don't want to leave until we know what's next. I'm going to leave this job when I know the next one coming. And I can guarantee you, the period in between, what I would call the void, that's where your solutions happen. That's where your change muscles starts coming up. And we're going to talk about that. It's the period in between that makes you who you are. It's not the, I go from one trapeze to the next. I'm going to let go of this one guy to go to the next. But it doesn't work that way. And so I allowed myself to just sort of relax into not knowing. And I tell you, for a person like me, and I'm sure a lot of you, it's really hard to say, I don't know. It's really hard to say, I'm lost right now. Or I don't have a big, beautiful business card, and I had a collection of them. It's really hard. It's hard to even show up at a conference like this without the big business card. Here's this amazing thing that I do, you know. And that happened to me quite a few times, as I'll share. And so what I did is I started changing the focus from external life to internal life. So it felt like the next frontier was the internal frontier. Like I'd proven myself on the outside, and I had no idea who I was on the inside. I was pretty empty. And I just started asking different questions of myself. How can I serve? How can I make a difference? What inspires me? What does my heart want to do? If, you know, I'd never grown up around the family I had, or the tribe I had, or even the religion I had, that's telling me to be a certain way, what is it that I would go ahead and do? And I didn't get the answers straight away. I definitely didn't. But if I had one intention at all times while I was, you know, walking around Cambodia or India or wherever I was, show me the way. Show me the way. Show me the way. That's all I said. And here's what started happening. I started sort of growing antenna on my head. And I started being hyper-perceptive of people, of things, of books, of everything that was going on around me. And here's what I noticed. Every single person I was meeting while I was traveling was in one of three categories. And all of you are. You're either going through some sort of a life change. You're either getting married, or you're getting divorced, or you're trying to lose weight, or you're trying to quit smoking, or you're dealing with a parent who's aging at home with Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, or there's some sort of life change, or you've just started a job and been promoted, or you are thinking about pursuing your dreams. The other category of people are people who are thinking about making a change, talking about making a change, but have done nothing about it. And there's a huge category of those people that show up on January 1st. So you'll be able to see them loud and clear. And those are people who, there's a lot of talk, and there's a little bit of desire, but there's actually no action behind it. So there's people who, you know, you have a feeling that what you're doing isn't quite right, and you haven't really done much about it. Or you have a feeling that this relationship isn't quite right, and you haven't done much about it. But that's the other category. And the third category are people who are helping other people through a change. So every single one of you is helping a friend, a colleague, a child, a spouse through some sort of a life change. Here's what's interesting. I was giving a talk about a couple of years ago, and I was talking about my three categories, and this one woman put her hand up. She goes, no, there's a fourth category. There's a fourth category. So here's the fourth category. The fourth category is all of you people who are waiting for someone else to change. Yes. You're waiting for your mom to change, and your dad to change, and your husband to change, and your boss to change. And that place of just sort of like someone else needs to change before me is very common. We tend to sort of look, and someone else needs to go through the change first. So that's what I noticed. The other thing I noticed was that, here's what I kept hearing about change. I hate change. Change is hard. I feel overwhelmed by change. I don't know how to start. I can think about it, but I have all these excuses in the way. I want my old life back, whatever that looks like. And I thought, this is amazing. Everyone hates change. And change is the #1 constant in life. How is that possible? And I thought, you know, there must be a way to make change easier. There must. We're all going through it. You know, I'd met and interviewed people formally and informally all around the world. I can promise you, someone going through a divorce here in North Carolina, you guys are experiencing the same feelings as someone I interviewed in China. We are so much more similar. It's incredible how this change is actually what sort of links everyone together. We're all going to get, you know, our fair share of change. You are, excuse me, you are a combination of all the changes you've ever made, initiated, faced, witnessed. That's it. That's who you are. So here's my obsession. make change easier. I had no idea what I was going to do. I had never thought I was going to write a book. I'd been told I was a business person, right? Business person, Stanford MBA, not self-help spiritual writer. That didn't work. And what you're going to see is that the hardest changes you will ever make are not external changes. They're not. They're not leaving a job. They're not losing weight. They're not even leaving a bad relationship. The hardest changes you will ever make are changes in your identity. They're how you see yourself. I'm a business person to I'm a creative person. That those are the things in terms of what you say to yourself on the inside that are the hardest changes to go through. That's why it took so long for me. So here I am with my little obsession. And I thought, well, you know, I love writing, so maybe I can just sort of write this in my journal. And I interviewed a couple of thousand people informally in my journal who were going through all these types of changes. And it's people who had just adopted, and people who had just miscarried, and people who had just lost a loved one, and people who, you know, had just been promoted and were feeling overwhelmed. It was really the whole spectrum of change. And I, with my antenna, I went looking for why you good at change and why is someone else having such a hard time? Why do some people struggle and some people get through losing a job, for example? Why do some people initiate a change and some people go ahead and just talk about it forever? So that's what I'm going to share with you, are these principles that I found through these stories of transition and transformation. And just in case you're worried, I did break up with the guy, so that he's out. And I'm now madly in love with someone else, and he's just the complete love of my life, which is when you really start following your soul, your heart always leads you to exactly the right place and the right person and the right job and what happened. Before I do the 9 principles of change, here's what happened in terms of how important these events are. So I'd written, you know, a little bit of these principles. I never thought this was going to be a book. I go to one of these types of events. It was a networking event in California, mainly women. And of course, I have a little bit of the shame of, I have no job right now, right? It's been 2 years at this point. I've made no money. And I sit at the table, and there's a bunch of women around me, and we don't have name badges. We don't know where anyone's from. And this woman starts talking to me, and she goes, so tell me your story. And I thought, you know, in that moment, I have a choice here. I can either massively impress her with like my super amazing background, or I can actually just be humble and just sort of say, well, this is actually where I'm at. And thank God, really thank God I chose the second one. Because when you're honest, amazing things happen. Stop impressing people. Like, you've got to tell people what's really going on. So I told her, I said, you know, I've made a big change, and I'm not making any money right now, and I don't have a big business card to give you. And I started telling her the story I've just told you. And then after like 15 minutes, she says to me, you know what, you're perfect for me. And I was like, perfect for you? Like, that sounds a little weird. And she goes, no, no, no. She goes, I came to this conference looking to do a story on someone. She goes, I have no idea who that person was going to be. She goes, you're it. You're definitely it. This woman was the features editor of Oprah magazine. Features editor. And so at this point, I'm like, okay, well, that's crazy. I don't have a website. I don't have a book. It's like, no, like, what, you know, what are you going to talk about me? And so I was the head story in the January edition in 2007 of going through change, and an example of someone who had gone through change. Now, those sort of synchronicities, they happen when you're honest. They happen when you're honest with yourself, and they happen when you're honest with other people. Here's really what's going on with me. And so long story short, after that, as you can imagine, now the book publishers show up. Have you ever thought of writing a book? Well, actually, I have. There's one on my computer. So, and it just sort of started sort of happening in that particular way. And you cannot predict these things. And I think as women, we all want certainty. There's the door. Where's the door after that? You want to see after, you know, door number 107 before you even start. That was the first door, right? Get honest with yourself about what's really going on. So that led to some money to help fund the website. And then, you know, within 2 years, we had millions of people on this website. I never thought I'd start a website. I don't particularly like, you know, websites. So here I am with this giant website with 60 different life changes. You know, I don't particularly like public speaking. And now suddenly I'm like, oh my God, now I've got to speak. So, you know, destiny pulls you in the direction of your courage. Destiny goes in the direction of what you are actually willing to surrender and just go, you know what, life? Do what you want with me. And so you do overcome, and you do find that. So here's, before I go into the 9 principles, all the important changes are internal changes. We're going to talk about that a lot. Change is all about getting comfortable with the unknown. It is not about how to do and what to do and tell me the 3 steps. That doesn't work that way. It's all about, you're in the unknown, woohoo, you're in the right place. That's the place to be. When you're in the void, it's what I say. You're in the arms of God. You're in the arms of grace. You're in the arms of life. You're in the void. You will be taken care of. And the very best of who you are comes out during times of change. It does not come out when everything's certain and perfect and you know what's going to happen for the entire year and your calendar is full. You don't like yourself when you're going through those kind of times. So that's sort of, just keep those in mind as I share these 9 principles with you. Before we do that, I'm going to make you guys do a little bit of your own sort of self-introspection. For anyone who's got a notebook or anyone who's taking some notes, I'm just going to ask you a few questions that are going to make this very relevant for you. Because I can share my story and I can tell you a lot more about, the personal stuff and the financial stuff, and I'll be all open for questions if you'd like. But here's some questions for you to sort of check in with what's going on for you. They're simple, no work. The first question is, yes or no, intuition. Do you think you're good at change? Yes or no? Next question. Do you think you are better at making or facing changes? Making changes. I initiate. I want this. I go for it. I want to lose the weight. I want to change something going on at work. I want to improve the relationship. I want to quit smoking. I want to get over this addiction. Making changes. Facing changes. Life throws one at you, and you're amazing under pressure. Very different types of people, but which one are you? Because it's great to be good at one, but life's going to invite you to be good at the other one, and you're just going to see which one are you, making or initiating. Third question. What is the best change you've ever made? Best change you've ever made. You have gotten married. You got divorced. Notice how both of those can be a best change. You changed jobs. Best change that ever happened to you. You got fired. And suddenly you're in something that you love. You went through some sort of a health challenge that, massively changed your life. Best change you've ever made. You moved, you graduated, you had kids, you took time off. You know what the next question is going to be. The hardest change you've ever faced. Hardest change you've ever faced. Losing a loved one, seeing a parent go through something very traumatic, dealing with depression, losing a child. Hardest change you've ever been through. And just in the back of your mind go, what's the one thing that got me through that change? Because what you're going to see is you're much, much better at change than you've ever been told. Much better. And we're going to go through that in a second. You're just going to see. You have a change toolbox that you've actually been using the whole time, but you're not aware of it. So what, in that really hard change, what got you through it? Was it your faith? Was it a particular belief? This will pass. Time heals. Was it your friends? Was it, what got you through that particular change? Next question. What is a change you would love to make? We're at the end of a year. We're coming up to this big New Year's resolution thing, 2013. If you can be sure of having one change happen in the next 12 months, if I saw you all again in a year, and you said, I got my change, I made it happen. What is the one change? Because here's what we do in New Year's resolution. Here are 9 changes that we want to go off and do. And guess what? You don't get one of them. Or you might get 1 out of the 9. But when you can start getting a sense of, this is the one I most want for the next 12 months. What is the one change that you most want to be clear on? And here's the side question. What is the number one excuse that's in the way? Number one excuse that's in the way. I'm going to tell you a few, because I've heard most of them, as you can imagine, in the last few years. I'm too old. I'm too young. It's going to take time. It's going to cost money. It's not my nature. It's not the kind of person I am. It's a big one, especially for women. I'm not the kind of person that gets divorced. I'm not the kind of person that leaves the corporate world. Someone's going to get hurt. Much rather hurt myself. We're really good at this. Someone else is going to get hurt. Someone's going to disapprove. It's also another big one. So what's the number one excuse that's in the way for you? I don't have time. Big one. I'm sure there's a few more you could probably throw out. But I don't have time. That's another, big sort of excuse that we have going on. So just be aware of what those excuses are. And the final question, just for you to get a sense where you're at, on a scale of 1 to 10, how willing do you really think you are, if you're honest, to welcome change into your life? It's what I call your change quotient. Companies have change quotients. I've spoken to companies and they've been at a 2. I can tell you one thing. Change is the word of the year. Change is the word of the decade. Companies that go through change will survive. Employees that can go through change will be the ones to stay in the companies. I wrote an article for Business Week about how companies today are hiring people who they can see have the flexibility to go through change. So just see, where am I at? If everything changed, personally, professionally, am I willing to go along with it? That's where you need to be, scale of sort of 1 to 10. Relationships. When people change in relationships, they stay together. When one person changes and one person doesn't, they split. So if you're looking at something going on, maybe even in your relationship life, are you willing to just be with the change? Because that's sort of where it all starts happening. Okay, so 9 principles. I've kept you waiting long enough. How am I doing on time? Okay, good. So keep that change in the back of your mind, the one that's sort of most important, most valuable, most inspiring for you right now. 9 principles of change. Here's what you're going to hear. Some of them are incredibly simple. As women, we're really good at the hard stuff. Really good at the hard stuff. We thrive on the difficulty and the hard and the simple stuff. It's just sometimes it's just not what we go to. So some of them are going to be like, wow, that's really simple. That's really obvious. Well, are you doing it? Are you doing it? That's what you should ask yourself. Is this actually something that I'm integrating in my life, even though I've heard it a million times? Other things you're going to notice are, some of them you're really good at already. Still write them down. Maybe you're in a phase where that's the one that you're most with right now. And some you're going to go, wow, I really need to focus on that. So just sort of put a little circle or an asterisk or something. And as I said, I could have, talked for hours on every one of these principles. So I'm just going to speed through them as best as I can. The very first principle of change. People who successfully navigate change and transition are optimists. They have positive beliefs. What kind of beliefs? Where do these beliefs come from? There's 3 kinds of beliefs that I found when I was talking to people. Beliefs about themselves, beliefs about life, and beliefs about the particular change that they're going through. Beliefs about themselves. Poor me. I'm a victim. This terrible thing happened to me. We're very good at doing the poor me thing, and we stay quite comfortable in that. Beliefs about needing to be perfect and needing to get it right and needing to not mess up. That doesn't empower you to go ahead and jump into the unknown. Believe me, you need to allow yourself to stumble and sort of get back up. So what are your dominant beliefs? What are the things that you most repeat to yourself over and over and over? I am too old. I am not good enough. Big one for women, right? I have no idea how to start. Beliefs about the particular things that what do you say to yourself when you look at yourself in the mirror? You're going to know what you believe about yourself. It is, if I had to build a house in front of you of how to sort of go through a change, the very first bricks I would put down are the things that you tell yourself, your beliefs, your inner dialogue. The worst thing you guys eat as women, all of us, is not food, it's not ice cream, it's not chocolate. The worst thing we feed ourselves is our inner dialogue. We have really crappy inner dialogue. And I invite you all from this moment on, it's 9:45, for the next 24 hours to watch your disapproval. I'm going to call it the 24-hour disapproval challenge. Watch how many times you disapprove of yourself. For the next 24 hours, the average woman disapproves of themselves between 45 and 60 times a day. You disapprove of your shoes, you disapprove of your hair, you disapprove of your skin, you disapprove of your body, you disapprove of what you said, what you ate, what you did, what time you woke up, the way you went to work, you didn't get to the gym, you didn't have time, whatever. But just watch, because when you pull it out of your blind spot and you can actually see the disapproval voice, it's like you've shone a light on it and it goes a little quieter. Oh, like you can give it a name. Just watch the disapproval, because that is the beginning of all change. It's like what you keep telling yourself is what you focus on and what will expand. Second belief, beliefs about life. This is one of my favorite ones. What you think about life. Einstein said it much better than I did, so I always use this quote. He said, the most important decision you will ever make in your life, are you ready? Is whether you believe you live in a friendly universe or an unfriendly universe. That's it. What does he mean by that? Life is on my side. I'm lucky. No matter what, I don't understand why this is happening. Life is conspiring for good. Friendly universe. Unfriendly universe. Why does this always happen to me? Why am I so unlucky? Why is this, stuff always land on me? Why am I the victim here? Why do I get blamed? Unfriendly universe. Why does life never work out for me? Jealousy, comparison, right? Unfriendly universe. So just think to yourself, which one am I? Like, am I a friendly universe? I don't like this sucks, it hurts, it's painful, but somehow life's going to work out. Friendly universe, unfriendly universe. Third set of beliefs is beliefs about the particular life change. Are you trying to lose weight? If you have belief that losing weight is hard, it will be. If you have a belief that there's no more great jobs out there, that's going to be your truth. You're going to experience life that way. If you have a belief that there's no amazing men in the world, they're all fill in the blanks, that will be your experience. So look at what is the belief that you're tying to the specific change that you've put on your piece of paper, you just sort of have in the back of your mind. What is the thing that's blocking? Because I can tell you, one of the things I found is that people who are good at change, they are in abundance. There's more jobs. There's more money. There are more homes. There are more amazing, beautiful life partners out there. There's more. Not, there's no more jobs. Look at this economy. I'm not going to be able to raise money for my little business idea. Scarcity. Which one are you? Abundance or scarcity? More. There's more coming. More is possible. Abundance, scarcity. Very important distinction. And the other thing, too, is to be open-minded. People who are good at change are open-minded. They don't go into, I know. I'm 50 years old. I have all this experience. I've been working 25 years. I know. When you go into the I know, you shut yourself off from change actually being a positive thing. So just ask yourself, how open-minded really are you? If I said to you, for anyone who wants to lose weight in the room, which I obviously have some experience in, you need to get wheatgrass or a big green juice into you every single morning. How open are you to doing that? Right? Or even worse, and I know I'm on camera, you need to, get a colonic. No way, right? Without even knowing or understanding. So where are you on the open-minded, closed-minded scale? Because it makes a massive, massive difference. What you're going to sense sort of through these, through the beliefs principle is that people who are good at change are very willing to do some deep self-inquiry. Change is not on the outside. The most important changes are internal. Are you willing to do some deep self-inquiry? Are you willing to ask yourself, what do I need to get honest about? Who do I need to forgive? What's going on mostly now in my life? So I can keep going, and I know I'm going to stay on time. Belief number two, principle number two. People who successfully navigate change believe in what I call the change guarantee. If you believe and hear nothing of what I said today, if this is the only thing you remember, this will make a giant difference to your life. I interviewed thousands of people who have gone through some of the worst changes you can possibly imagine. And I always ask them one question: what good came from this change? And I tell you at the beginning, I thought a few of them might throw their coffee at me. And that never happened, actually, because there was always a place within them that could come back to, here's the good that happened from it. So the change guarantee states this: from this change, from this situation, something good will come. I have it written in my office. I have it in the car. I have it in the kitchen. I have it by my phone. I have it anywhere that I feel change might strike at any time. Because when I park my mind on that particular statement, you move towards it. The mind knows where it's going, and it starts looking for the good that might happen. It doesn't feel too good, you know, I'm all for that. But when you go into something good will come from this, small thing happens at work. I don't like it, it sucks, I don't, you know, something good's gonna come from this. I teach this to kids, they get it instantly. Adults, yeah, really? Prove it to me. I wanna see the good thing, and then I'm gonna believe it. Kids are like, oh, okay, plans have changed, something good's gonna happen. So just get into more of a childlike, what's the possibility for what might happen here? Because why is change hard? Because we cling to our plans. This is my life and the way it is, and I've always been this way. And change kind of, you know, messes a little bit with that. And we need to sort of ungrip from our plans. We need to sort of stop holding on so tightly to everything that we have in our life. And then you can see life conspiring for good. You can see how it's possible. When we go through change, the number one thing we ask is why? Why is this happening? Why is this happening to me? Why is never the right question. Why gets you stuck when you're in a change? How is this a good thing? How can I learn from this? Who can help me? If you're in the why mode, you're in stuck mode. You're in the group of people, and I interviewed a lot of them, who are having a hard time through change. So just look at what's the dominant sort of question that's going on in the background. Principle number 3, people who are going through any change or transition. It's what I call your change muscle. You all have a change muscle. It's not in a particular place in your body, but we all have a change muscle. People who are good at change know that they are resilient. They know that they will bounce back. They know that they are strong. They know that there are things inside of them that they can pull on when they really, really need to. I had a wonderful discussion last night with someone about resilience and about the ability, especially for women, to bounce back, because I looked at the difference between men and women. And there's something about women, the resiliency and the bouncing back is extraordinary. Here's what you need to know. The change muscle remembers every single change you've ever been through. I defy anyone in this room to not have gone through at least 50 life changes, at least. If I had time with you and I was doing a workshop, I'd make you all get out a piece of paper and do what I call your change resume. And to just notice the changes you've already been through. You've graduated. You might have lost a loved one. You might have, you know, quit smoking. You've gotten a job. You had children. You know, might have lost a child. You've dealt with people being sick around you. You are an amazing array of changes. But here's what happened. When you were in the midst of those changes, you never acknowledged yourself because you were so busy just trying to sort of, you know, make it through the change because it was pretty hard. So you need to take some time to acknowledge yourself. I'm the person that went through that. Yeah, no shit. I'm the person that got through. Fill in the blank. But we're terrible at acknowledging ourselves. And so here, you're staring at, you know, potentially new change, new change, new change. And the brain goes, right? New change. I have no references for this new change. And that's not true. You have a million references because the process of change is the same process. Even though it might have the word, you know, separation on it, or change of career, whatever it might look like. The word might be different, but the tools that you have, I promise you, if you can just elicit them out of you and sort of say, here are my beliefs that I go to, here are the actions I go to, here are the people I go to, but it's being aware of, you know, you have that change muscle inside of you. We all do. Teach your kids they have a change muscle. You know, they love their little superhero guys, girls. Teach them that they also have a change muscle. It makes a massive, massive difference to them later on in life. Principle number 4, this is the juiciest one, is what I call the change demons. The change demons are all of those emotions that show up during times of change. There are only a certain amount of them, if that makes anyone feel better. There's only a certain amount of them that are guaranteed to show up at the change party. I'm going to tell you what those are in a second. This was some of the most interesting research that I did. I went looking for what do people do to get through change? What are the actions? How are they different? one of the most interesting parts of the research was that people who are good at change are very emotional, which is really good news for us women. Very emotional. They're very in touch with their emotions. And they cry, and they're scared, and they're in despair. They're in touch with their emotions. The emotions, ladies, are the fuel for change. Not your intellect, not your mind, and not the three-point action plan of how to go ahead and do whatever it is you're thinking. Your emotions are your fuel. Most people will do anything to avoid feeling their feelings during times of change. They'll Facebook their feelings away. They will eat their feelings away. They will overwork their feelings away. And guess what? You're only prolonging the change. Emotions, right? Energy in motion. The emotion wants to move through. When the changes are showing up, right? The changes are showing up for the change party. Welcome them in. Here, go ahead, take a seat. You do not feed them, and you do not entertain them. And you don't invite a whole bunch of friends. So if you're feeling sadness, you don't need to go, is fear out there? Okay, fear, let's bring some fear in. Or let's bring some regret. Let's sort of bring in all the regret from my entire life, because that's what we do. We're actually just feeling one emotion, and we're experts at stacking, stack, stack, stack. And that's where things kind of go to hell. Just stay with the feeling, label it. I have some sadness coming up. I have some fear coming up. Not, I am sad, I am depressed, I am terrified. I have some, and identify the emotion. So I've kept you holding. Here are the 6 emotions, just to be aware of. There's a lot in the book about these emotions, because these are the core of getting you through or not. Every one of these emotions has what I call an antidote. It has something that is stronger than that particular emotion. The first change demon is fear, of course. Fear of things being permanent. Fear of what's going to happen now. Fear of making ends meet. Fear of being responsible. Fill in the blank. The antidote to fear is always faith. Faith in yourself, faith in something greater, faith in your friends helping you through, faith in your body, just getting you back on track and strong. The antidote to fear is always faith. Next change demon, I'm going to speed through these, is doubt. Doubt that this is ever going to get better. Doubt that you're ever going to be in another relationship. Doubt that you're ever going to find another job. Doubt that you're ever going to feel better. Doubt that something is going to change for the positive. The antidote to doubt is always surrender. I don't know. I don't know how it's going to work out. Letting go of control. It's really hard for us. But if you're in the doubt, just sort of go, actually, I don't know. Let it go. Next change demon is blame. When we go through change, we go into a lot of blame energy. Who is to blame? Who can I blame? My father for what he did to me when I was 5, my boss, someone gets your blame energy. So, right, who is the person that consistently gets your blame energy? Blame never achieves anything. You might be the person getting your blame energy, right? It goes right back to what you keep telling yourself. It's got to stop. The antidote to blame is always responsibility. You leave responsibility with the people where it needs to be in a healthy way, and you take on the part for yourself. Change is a lot about self-responsibility. Which part of this is for me? What is in this for me to look at? But if you're in blame, get responsible. It'll go through much, much quicker. Next change demon that often shows up is impatience. We don't like being in that void. It's like, give me the trapeze. I want to know which one I'm on. You're in the relationship with time. Speed it through, speed it through. You make wrong decisions. You do things very quickly when you go through change. I don't want to stay in the uncertainty. I don't know what to tell people. The antidote to impatience is not patience. The antidote to impatience is endurance. It's about actively being engaged. It's not about sitting back on the couch and saying, well, Ariane said I can surrender, and life's taking care of me, so there's really not much for me to do, right? It's endurance. It's being an active participant. It's a step at a time. It's a lot of very small changes. So people who are good at change have a very different relationship with time. Just be aware of that. If you're on the clock, it's got to hurry up. It's taken 6 months, 6 years. Give up the time thing. The next 2 are guilt. Guilt shows up very quickly, and I'm going to talk about these 2 together. Guilt and shame. They are women's middle names, right? We feel ashamed about being diagnosed with a disease. We feel ashamed about being divorced. We feel ashamed about still being single. We feel ashamed about not having kids. We feel ashamed about not fill in the blank. But there is so much shame and guilt that just keeps going. And when change shows up, it pushes on that trigger big time. The antidote to shame is honor. You need to stand in your power. Yep, I'm the person that got diagnosed. Hold it strong. I'm the person that is nervous when I speak. Hold it strong. I'm the person that, is messing up with my teenager at home. The more you bring it out in the light, it has no more power over you. The antidote to guilt is forgiveness. A lot to say about forgiveness. Forgiving yourself. Who else needs your forgiveness? Those are your change demons. Principle number 5. One of my favorites. Also one of the hardest. The power of acceptance. Change is not the hard part. Your resistance to the change is the hard part. The actual change happening right now is not that difficult. You being against it and you pushing back against it and you wanting it to be different, that's hard. We are experts at going against what life is actually presenting to us. Great author, friend of mine, called Byron Katie. She has an amazing quote that I love. When you argue with reality, you lose, but only 100% of the time. We are arguing with reality every single day. We argue vis-a-vis our age. We argue vis-a-vis our partners that we want to change. We are constantly arguing with reality. That makes it hard, right? Imagine, life is, you're in the river of life. Many people have used that as an analogy. You're in the boat, right? You're sort of moving your oars. Change happens. You get thrown in the river. What do most of us do? One of two things. We cling to the nearest rock, right? I'm going to hold here. I'm going to be stuck here and I'm going to hold. There's no way I'm going down that river. I can't even see what's next. I can't see where I'm going to get the money from. I can't see where I'm going to get the next relationship from. I don't want to go see what's there. It might be a waterfall. It might kill me. You hold in the flowing river. Do you know how difficult that is? To hold against where life is actually trying to have you move towards? Or then there's a whole bunch of you that do the other thing. You start rowing back upstream. I want the money back I lost in the stock market. I want the relationship back. Now I've just been dumped or cheated on. I want the job back that I don't have anymore, right? And you start looking in the different direction. When you're going through change, getting to a place of saying, you know what, I accept that this thing has happened. I don't like it. I don't endorse it. I don't even want to have a conversation about it, but I accept it. So I would really ask you all, what is something that you have not accepted? It might be happening today, it might have happened in your past, but there is still something hooking you that you have not accepted, and it's holding you back, right? You're in the river, and life is not kind of going, you know what, just go with it. Go with that friendly life, friendly universe. But think, are you in a place of saying, something happens at work tomorrow, tomorrow? Can you get to a place quickly of saying, okay, I accept. I'm not going to put any energy and suffering into resisting it. That's the power of acceptance. This deep, it's the acceptance of your emotions. Yep, I'm feeling sad right now. The acceptance of it. Invite it, right? It's the same thing. You resist the emotion. You resist reality. You resist people being the same way that they are. Principle number 6. We've got 3 more to go. Principle number 6 is the things that you can control when you're going through a life change. Change is very synonymous with being out of control. So I became fascinated in asking people who had gone through change, well, what can you control? Like, it's fine to sort of, be floating and like, well, what can I do? Most people, when they think of control, they go external. I want to control my kid. I want to control the people that work for me. I want to control my finances, right? You go external. The only thing you can control are internal things. That's it. What are they specifically? There's a few. I'm just going to mention a couple. You can control your language and your vocabulary. What do I mean by that? People who are good at change do not use words like disaster, worst day ever, I've had a horrific week, this person is a nightmare, right? Very familiar. We're very casual with our words. You are wiring yourself to feel that way. You use these words all the time without even realizing it. They're in your blind spot. And if you don't know your go-to words, I promise you, the people you live with, your friends, and your colleagues, they know your words. So if you want to be honest and have some humility, just kind of go, what are my words? Like, what are they? What do I kind of very informally go to? Your words are wiring your nervous system to feel like a nightmare, feel like a disaster, feel like what's going on. So be very conscious. The good news is you have really positive go-to words. Some people, it's awesome, or awesome in American. Some people, you know, are fantastic, and everything's always fantastic. And you can see that that's how they live. That's really how they are. So what's the language? Other thing is your questions. What are the questions you keep asking yourself? You do have control over those. Because I guarantee you, any question you ask your mind's going to answer it. And you're going to go, well, it must be the truth. I mean, I have an answer. You know, why did this happen to me? Well, you're an idiot. And well that, you know, or why, whatever it is. I'm not even going to go into some of them because they're just toxic. But when you ask a question, the mind's going to answer it. So you can control. You know, we've gone through these. What's my lesson here? What is it? Do I need to let go? Do I need to accept? Do I need to be emotional? Do I need to be, what's my lesson? Who can help me? It's a great question. How can I find some humor in this? Right? This is so crazy, this change that's going on. How can I find some humor in this? There's a bunch of questions that, you know, are positive, and the mind goes, oh, I'll tell you, you know, because the mind's on your side. It's going to answer those questions. And that's what moves you in the direction of change being easier. What you focus on expands, right? What you put your mind's attention on is what you move towards. Here's the third thing you can control, one of my favorites, your stories. You are a walking library of stories. You have a story about your parents, you have a story about yourself, you have a story about why you can't lose weight, you have a story about every client, you have a story about every colleague, you have a story about people in this room, you have a story about women, you have a story about the Republicans and the Democrats, you have a story about everything. If you want to go through a change in a positive way, you need to stop telling people your story. Losing weight is so hard, pursuing your dreams, whatever it is. You need to identify what your stories are because they're holding you hostage. Right? In the library, you have packed so many stories. You're boring people with your stories. And I know this from experience. I used to bore my friends with being single in New York. Here are all the stories I had about men in New York, and I had a lot. And they were fact, right? They were true because they were my experience. And I had dates, and they were my truth. And so when people are like, you know what, Ariane, I'm really done with your story. I can't hear one more of these stories because the story of there's no available, wonderful, spiritual men in New York is a story. The truth is there's plenty of available spiritual men in New York. And so giving people permission, the same thing with your language, to tell you, here's the story you keep telling me over and over and over. About the person you work with, about the person you live with, about yourself, about your age, about your money. What are your stories? You got to make a commitment to stop the story. No more stories. Bring them into your blind spot and go, oh my God, I've been saying this story over and over. So no more stories. Principle number 7? 7. Principle number 7 is find your spiritual side. People who are good at change know that when they're going through some sort of a change, it is always an invitation to go inside and connect to something greater. There's something bigger going on. You can't identify it. A lot of people don't call it the same thing. God, grace, Jesus, love, life, the universe, Buddha, whatever it is. But change is always an invitation to connect with the part of you that does not change. A lot of change on the outside. Go back to the place inside of you that is still. You can call it the witness. You can call it the detached. version of yourself. You can call it the higher self. You can call it the higher mind. But it's the part of you that can rest in knowing that there's a lot of busyness on the outside, but there's a part of you that doesn't change. It is so important to find that place. It is usually what pulls people through. It is their faith. It is their connection to something greater. How do you connect to that? The number one way you connect to that is through stillness. It is through silence. We are not good as women at creating silence around us. We are good at creating busyness around us. And so we feel not attuned. We don't hear our inner microphone. We don't connect to the wisdom that's actually really trying to come through. You've got to make, I call it my non-negotiables. And I really invite you to look at, do I have any non-negotiables? My non-negotiables are my spiritual path and my health. No one touches them. No boyfriend, no family, no child, no boss, nothing. You need to create some sacred space around you for your non-negotiables because you're constantly negotiating your time away. Everyone has 10 or 15 minutes a day to be in stillness. And if you don't, there's something wrong with your day. Because you have time to eat 3 times a day, and you have time to be on Facebook, and you have time to be on email. So create some stillness around you. And you know, meditation scares people. It's not about sitting on a mat. Find a way that you connect, and it could be through journaling, and it could be through listening to some lovely music, which is not the news, which is, you know, I'm going to hear fear, and then you end up feeling fear all the time when you're so connected to the news. For some, it might just be take a walk, go into nature, do anything, go swimming, anything that gets you connecting back to sort of what's going on the inside. It's one of the absolute foundations that I found when people always said, you know, what really helped me through was. And it's sort of knowing that, you know, there's something else that's sort of helping and guiding you through. Principle number 8 is your change support team. People who are good at change are not alone. The worst thing we do as human beings is to keep thinking we're alone. I'm the only one going through this. No one has ever felt this bad. No one has ever cried so much on the couch. No one has ever stayed in bed so long being depressed. No one has ever eaten so much Ben & Jerry's ice cream, right? Like there's a real separation. I'm alone. No one can relate. No one has ever felt this way. And it is so common you're not even aware of it. There is no one I spoke to in over 7 years of speaking to people going through change who did not identify people that helped them through change. So if you're in the I'm the kind of person that sort of tends to go alone, all I'm saying is it's going to make change a hell of a lot harder. So just ask yourself, you know, who is on your change support team? Because I have news for you. A lot of the times, it's not your mom. And it might not even be your spouse. But here's what we do. We go through change, we speed dial them, and then what do we get? A whole dose of worry and fear and their stuff, and now you don't feel even better. Be very mindful of who you let in when you're going through change. They are on your love team, that's fine. But your change support team is sometimes very different people. When you go through change, it's very normal that new people come into your life. People who have no reference for you. They don't know who you are, they don't know how many times you've tried to lose weight, they don't know how many years you've been trying to get something up and running. They take you for who you are today, no identity around it. You want some of those people around you who can see and believe in sort of what's possible for you. So just sort of ask yourself, who are the 5 people I spend the most amount of time with? Those 5 people have a massive influence on your life, massive. What kind of people are they? Are they happy? Are they depressed? Are they optimistic? Are they corporate? Are they entrepreneurs? Are they thin? Do they have their financial affairs in order? Because whatever change you've put on that list that you want to do, you need to have someone on your change team who's been through that change. And I can tell you, for all the changes I've been through, I love helping people through the changes I've really gone through. So give people an opportunity to help you. Like, people are dying to connect in that way. There's 2 types of people that can help. So be very aware of this. There are friends, and some of us are this too, that get in the hole with people. You're right, he's such a jerk. I can't believe he said that. She's such a bitch. I can't believe you work for her. Like, right? Friends that get in the hole are people that agree with you. And all you want is their agreement. You don't want anything else. You just want them to sort of be, on your side. Guess they're also the people that drag you to the bar. Here, have a whole bunch of alcohol, numb your feelings. You're right, and they make you eat. And then you go back home, and then your head hits the pillow, because it always does, and then you're faced with your own conscience. And you don't feel too good, right? There are a lot of people there who all you want is for people to agree with you. There's other types of friends, what I call, for lack of a better word, ladder friends. They see you in the hole, and they go, huh, yeah, I know it's really hard. I know you've been having a really hard time. And they start helping you up the ladder. They don't coach you. They don't fix you. They don't change you. They already see you as being out of the ladder. They see who and what you are, really, without your story, without the sadness, without the blame, without everything that's going on attached to them. Those are the people you need around. Who are your ladder friends? Who are the people that check in with you, inspire you, send you a happy email, send you a positive quote? Who are the people that you reach out to? Because a lot of the times we reach out to people to distract us, actually not to help us. Change becomes a lot longer process. Final principle of change. People who are good at change take action. There's a reason why this principle is at the end. All change is emotional. I think you know that by now. And yet, people who are good at change, they need to get on the court. You need to pick up the racket, and you need to get on the court and play. Actions, another super interesting part of the research. The most important action you can take through any change, personal, professional, health, family, whatever it is. Are you ready for this? The most important action you can take is to take care of your health. That's it. That is the foundation of all change. Here's what's true. There's the irony. When you go through change, the first thing to walk out the window is your health. That's why change is so hard. What do? You sleep less, or you sleep more. You start drinking more coffee, more alcohol. You don't move. You're not exercising. You're not going for a walk. You're staying stuck. Right? It's such a common thing. I'm feeling stuck. Well, have you moved? Like, have you gotten up? It's so simple, but it's true. And then the other one is, you're not sort of exercising, you're not eating well, your sugar is going through. So a lot of the times we're feeling really emotional, but it's actually something going on the health side. Your body is made for change. You have to change every split second, otherwise your body would fall apart. So there's a part of you that is already really wired for change. So here's, in the introduction, she mentioned it, the seed of change, the foundation of all change. You've been patient to hear it. SEED. Teach your kids this, teach your colleagues this. S is for sleep. E is for exercise of any kind. You're having a bad whatever. Go for a walk. Go in the parking lot, go for a walk. Just move. Emotions want to move. Do you know how difficult it is to feel depressed and upset when you're moving? Do you know how easy it is to feel when you're just sitting down? Just that makes a difference. So E is for exercise. The next E is for eating well. Stay off the sugar. You've got to create an association. Sugar equals depressed. Sugar equals feel like shit. Sugar equals, not sugar equals fat. We're all human. I take my share. But sugar equals gonna feel worse. Not the opposite, because when you're in the uncomfortableness, comfort food, sugar, and then you feel worse. It's as basic as that. But when people really got this principle, when they were going through change, and they could really see that they have to help themselves go through change in just the health foundation. That was the most important action. It was not about what to do. It was not about who was educated or who read the books or who had the best advice. It was none of that. It was really, how am I doing in terms of self-care, which is a big theme for women. Put yourself on the top of the list. Am I being good to myself? Have I taken care of myself? I've done one-on-one coaching with people, and I see them, and I'm like, you just need some water. Like, just hydrate. You don't need to pay me money. Like, just have some water and leave. Sometimes it's so obvious to me that that's actually what's really going on. So that's the seed of change. The other thing I'll say with actions is that change is never big actions. Change is always woodpecker actions, right? Whatever the change is that you most want, that transformation, you pick the tree, you identify the one you want. And you keep going back there every day, every day, every day, every day. And you know what? Your beak is going to hurt. It is. I'm not saying change is easy. You got to go back. What most people do is they pick 9 trees, right? So they peck a little bit here, and then they peck a little bit, and nothing ever really happens. Get really clear that change is about small actions. It's not about sort of the big, massive thing. So those are the 9 principles. You know, D is drink. Drink water. Drink water. So D is stay off the coffee, stay off the sugar, stay off the wine, which is so tempting to go to, oh, this is going to make me feel better. You've got to wire your brain to sort of go, actually, this is going to do the opposite of that. Where are you at on the foundation of change? So positive beliefs, change guarantee, your change muscle, your change demons, the power of acceptance, accepting the change that's going on, the things you can control when you're going through change, finding your spiritual side, getting in touch with that inner voice, the soul. It was the beginning of all of my journey, was just going inside, tuning in, turning that inner microphone up. Whatever it's telling you, you're never going to get it down to 0. I promise you. It's always going to kind of be there in the background. Turn the volume way up. Change support team. No one changes alone. Sort of who's around you. Who are you letting into that space? And the final one is taking action. Always starting with you. Self-care, self-acknowledgement, self-inquiry. It is the least selfish thing you can do, is to put yourself first. You guys are moms, you guys are wives, your partners, your friends, your bosses, your colleagues, you're so many things. You need to acknowledge who you are, how far you've come, how amazing you are. You know, with all the things, the mind keeps a record of all the negative. You got to start switching it. You got to start seeing the, you know, the beauty and amazing and just extraordinary. I mean, I've been looking at you now for, you know, an hour. And you guys are, you know, you're incredible, beautiful beings who just have no sense of how amazing you are. That's my sort of conclusion from just looking at you for an hour. So blessings, and what a pleasure, and thank you for inviting me, and thanks for everyone to make this event happen. Thank you, thank you.